Imagine, for a moment, if every single child in Britain went to a school funded like Eton or St. Paul's, not as a slogan, but as cold, hard arithmetic. What would it take? Are we talking a minor budget tweak, or a seismic shift in national priorities? Let me be clear, the gap is enormous. Right now, the UK spends about £5,200 per state, school pupil each year. Private schools? On average, £20,000 per year per pupil. That's quadruple the state provision. Multiply that difference across 10.6 million children, and you arrive at a jaw-dropping £140 to £180 billion extra annually. That's more than the current NHS budget. Now, you might ask, is this number just fantasy? But here's the setup. This is what it actually costs to treat every child, not just the privileged 7%, as worthy of the very best. Conflict arises with our national psyche. We're uncomfortable with big numbers, especially when they threaten the status quo. Some might say, sure, but is it even possible? To which I say, let's get practical. Break it down. This is not a pipe dream. It's the price tag for equity, opportunity, and ambition at a national scale. And every pound is accounted for in staff, buildings, materials, and yes, political courage. You may be thinking, but can our economy bear such a load? Let's hold that question for a moment, because in this episode, I'll show you not just the cost, but why this investment is the foundation of a thriving, forward-looking society. The sticker shock is real, but so is the opportunity. Let's prime ourselves with two technical terms: fiscal capacity, meaning the government's ability to raise revenue, and per-pupil expenditure, which is the true measure of what we put behind a child's future. In the UK, our per-pupil expenditure is among the lowest in the developed world. That's the setup. The conflict is, do we leave it there or step up to meet our children's needs? Resolution isn't just about writing bigger checks. It's about building a system where world-class isn't a postcode lottery, but a promise. So, what happens to our economy when we make that promise? Let's dive in. All right, let's get granular. What does pouring an extra £150 billion into education do to a nation's economy? First, it raises UK taxes from about 37% to 43% of GDP, on par with Denmark or Finland. That's the setup. The conflict higher taxes are always political dynamite. Some households might feel a pinch about £5,300 more if we spread it evenly. But real tax systems don't work like a dinner split at a restaurant. Higher earners, in theory, should shoulder the largest load. Now, here come the technical terms: fiscal multiplier and human capital formation. A fiscal multiplier tells us that when you raise taxes, you pull some money out of the economy. Think of it as a short-term headwind. Human capital formation, however, is the long-term boost you get from a better educated, more productive workforce. You may ask, do we risk a recession? Not exactly. Economists predict a minor, temporary dip, estimated at about 1% of GDP, as we adjust. But then, the magic of compounding kicks in. Let me tell you a story. In the 1990 seconds, Finland faced its own education reckoning. It chose to invest, not shrink. The result? Decades of prosperity, innovation, and social cohesion. The UK could do the same. Redistribution isn't just an economic shuffle, it's a renewal of the social contract. Private school families save on fees, the public pays more tax, but everyone gains a fairer, more dynamic society. You might still wonder, why doesn't GDP boom overnight? Because GDP equals consumption plus government spending plus public and private investment plus net exports raising government spending doesn't automatically grow the pie if you shrink consumption at the same time. That is to say, spending more on education whilst raising tax to pay for it. It's an accounting shuffle. But the long-term effect? That's where things get interesting. Resolution is that the short-run squeeze is the down payment. The payoff is a high-skill, high-wage economy. In the long arc, education isn't a cost, it's the engine of national renewal. Let's get tangible. You can't have smaller classes or better support if you don't have the people. That's our setup. The conflict? Today, the UK's average class size is 26.2, a far cry from the 15 to 20 you'll find in top private or Nordic schools. To match that, We'd need to create 119,000 extra classes, hire 175,000 new teachers, and bring on 105,000 additional teaching assistants. That's a 31% workforce expansion. Now, here comes a technical analogy. Think of the education workforce like the infrastructure of a city. If you double the population but don't add roads, you get traffic jams and gridlock. That's where UK schools are now overcrowded, under-resourced, and burning out staff faster than we can train replacements. But here's the twist. This isn't just an expense, it's a job creation engine. With 1.8 million unemployed, recruiting even 200,000 from that pool slashes unemployment by 11%. That means benefit savings and more tax receipts, which add up to about £4 to £4.5 billion a year in money flowing back into the exchequer. Now you might be thinking, can we even fill these jobs? The answer: with investment in training, with attractive pay, and with restored respect for the profession, yes. Nations with high teacher pay and status don't have recruitment crises, they have waiting lists. Imagine a UK where becoming a teacher is as prestigious as becoming a doctor or engineer. So we have the outcome: more jobs, less unemployment, and a virtuous cycle where better schools attract better staff, and better staff create better outcomes. That's the blueprint for sustainable national renewal. Let's talk bricks and mortar. The buildings our children learn in are as important as the lessons themselves. Currently, the UK's school estate is in crisis. Rack beams failing, £13.8 billion of repair backlog, buckets catching leaks in corridors. Decades of underinvestment, short-term fixes, and a tendency to fund executive salaries over ceilings have brought us here. Here's a technical term for you: capital depreciation. Just like a car that needs regular servicing, buildings degrade over time. Without routine maintenance, and the industry standard is 3 to 5% of asset value per year, you end up paying double later. That's exactly where we are now. Now, let me paint a picture. Imagine converting vacant offices into classrooms, reviving mothballed schools, and building new, future-proof spaces. This isn't fantasy. It's happening worldwide. Office-to-classroom conversions cost about £1,200 per metre squared, which is half the price of new builds. The real solution is a blend. Use what we've got, build what we need, and maintain it all properly. You might ask, is this overkill? Are we gold-plating the estate? Not at all. Nordic countries invest 10 to 12 billion a year in maintenance and renewal, plus another 1 to 1.5 billion for upgrades like climate adaptation and digital infrastructure. In the UK, which has a larger pupil population, we don't even spend 2.3 billion a year. By doing maintenance, you avoid rack-style disasters and create spaces where learning can flourish for generations. Safe, modern, inspiring environments aren't luxuries, they're prerequisites for world-class education. Invest in the physical estate, and you invest in every child's future and the nation's. Now comes the big question. Does any of this stack up internationally, or are we reinventing unicorn economics? High-performing nations, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, already spend 6 to 7% of GDP on education. The UK? We spend a meagre 4.2 to 4.4%. That's a shortfall of £45.60 BN every year, decade after decade. Let's introduce two technical benchmarks. Education spending as a percentage of GDP and teacher professional parity, which is the standard where teaching is paid and respected like other graduate professions. In Finland, teachers earn close to what engineers and doctors do. Their average class size? Around 20. Their estate? Modern, resilient, and digitally future-proof. Now, you might be thinking, but aren't these countries smaller, less complex? Actually, their diversity and urban-rural challenges mirror the UK's. What sets them apart is a national commitment to investment and equity. They don't treat world-class schooling as an add-on, but as the bedrock of the country's success. Let me be blunt. The outlier isn't the proposal to spend more, it's the UK's chronic underfunding and tolerance for mediocrity. When we compare apples to apples, our plan lands right where high performers already are. The difference? They reap higher productivity, better health, less inequality, and stronger democracy. There are no unicorns here, just international norms. The choice is simple: do we want to be a world leader, or are we content falling further behind? If we're serious, then investing at these levels isn't radical, it's overdue. So, what does all this mean for you, for your community, for our collective future? We've seen the numbers, the evidence, and the hard-earned lessons from 40 years of reform. The problem is inertia, cynicism, the belief that big change is impossible. But let me challenge that. Every major education turnaround in history started with someone refusing to accept the status quo. Here are your actionable terms: political will and implementation pathway. Political will is about building coalitions, parents, educators, business leaders who demand world-class, not mediocrity. The implementation pathway is about concrete steps: recruit and train a new generation of teachers, invest in modern buildings, restore professional pay, and hold leaders accountable not for logos, but for real outcomes. Now, imagine you're at a school gate, looking at your child or a neighbor's. Do you want them to have the same opportunities as the 7% in private schools? If so, then it's time to make this a political and civic demand, not just a private wish. 23% of our MPs went to private school. In the last Conservative cabinet, 70% had been privately educated. It is worth pointing out that compares to only 8% of the 2024 Labour cabinet. The party who has been in power most recently really is saying, "I'm all right, Jack, you'll have to suffer." Let me leave you with a rhetorical question. What's the real cost of doing nothing? Bigger class sizes, crumbling buildings, teacher shortages, and a future that slips quietly out of reach. The alternative is bold, yes, but the evidence shows it's both feasible and necessary. This isn't about waiting for a miracle. It's about building a coalition for renewal, step by step, school by school, policy by policy. The choice is ours. Let's make it count.